Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Darrow here with another Options in Play video update. So, I promised you yesterday that I was going to give a little Spiders update, and I felt like today was a good day because finally pausing after just a crazy few weeks, right? Uh, and I like to do these videos just, well, we do this every couple weeks when we meet for our option session, right? And on our weekly letters, we do it on our Fridays. So summarize what happens on Friday, like the previous 5 days, and those go out on the Sunday night letters. But I like to do these videos just to kind of walk you through the visuals every once in a while. What I'm looking at, what's priced in, right? Like kind of just like the overall feel and like what's going on in the overall tape, just because it forms a lot of biases when it comes to trades, right? In a bearish tape, focus on bearish trades, and a bullish tape, bullish trades, right? So where are we at? All right. So what a difference a week makes, right? So last Monday we had closed basically at our lowest level since beginning of March, right? And we were underneath all moving averages, all major near-term moving averages, and by Friday, so here we had rallied to reset above all the moving averages. We had about a 15 point run from Monday's low to Friday's high, give or take. And for the first portion of this week, right, so through the first 3 days, we um, did extend, but we've pulled back, and now it seems like we're starting to kind of digest the gains above the 50-day, right? Which I was talking about this on the VTF earlier this morning. Like typically when you see like a move, like a sharp move down or a sharp move up, what you're watching is either for a pullback, so in this case, a pullback, or a sideways consolidation, right? Because you want to work off the overbought conditions. So it's whether you get an actual pullback or kind of like a time consolidation, aka like a sideways chop, right? And right now it seems as though we're kind of falling into that latter category with like a sideways chop, because we're not really, considering where we came from, we're not really pulling back as much as you would have anticipated, right? We haven't even been able to close the gap just from Friday. So had a pretty big green to red reversal yesterday, falling through a little bit, but still haven't been able to close the gap, nor have we been able to actually physically test the 50-day. So it seems like the selling really isn't aggressive, and to me that kind of leads itself more to like the bullish camp right now. Okay, so it seems like we're starting to consolidate above the 50-day, above all of these moving averages. Momentum, obviously, in the near term is higher, right? Had this monster rally, and if we start to creep up through 290, which is really kind of like the last line in the sand. I mean, the 50-day was really the most important, but 290 is really like the last line in the sand for bears. And if we get through that, you're probably looking at potentially retest the 52-week high in short order, right? Um, Now, on the downside, if we sink back underneath the 50-day, that would be step one, right? And the further we go, obviously, the more moving averages we're going to trade back through, and then momentum could pick up as we start to like kind of snowball through moving averages. But for right now, your focus is going to be on the 50-day, and the longer we stay above the 50-day, the more likely it is that we see a move to retest the 52-week high. As crazy as that would have seemed last Monday, and that's kind of the setup we're at right now. Now, what's coming up? Well, we got a couple things coming up. We have next week is the FOMC meeting, all right, and it's really going to be interesting for the Fed to hear what they say about rate rise, like hike or the dot plot, which has kind of been abandoned. But if they're going to be cutting, right? I mean, that's what the market's pricing in. I believe three rate cuts for the remainder of this year. So obviously these FOMC meetings are going to be like increasingly significant because of that, right? And maybe on the same level, if not possibly more important, is going to be the G20, which is the 28th to 29th of June. So like the last couple days in June. So that's when there's going to be a lot of emphasis placed on the meeting between Trump and Xi, and whether there's any sort of deal or any sort of progress made at that meeting, right? So we have a couple pretty substantial catalysts on the horizon for the overall market, those two being the biggest, right? And it comes kind of in a backdrop of heightened overall volatility, right? And from like an option pricing point of view, I often feel like when volatility is low, right? I feel like the options on the overall market, so like the SPY, Q, Dow, they tend to be overpriced typically. That's this is more of like a gut thing, right? What I've seen over like my like the course of like following this is like when volatility is low, I feel like the option, like the weekly straddles tend to be overpriced, right? Because we don't really get like clean, consistent moves a lot of times. But when the volatility is high, I feel like there's a better chance that the option straddles, right? The pricing on like the weekly contracts tend to be underpriced more. Like they under appreciate the amount of action we could see, right? Like, I doubt many of the options were priced for a 15, 16 point rally last week, right? Nor were they priced probably for a 10-point drop the week before that, right? So it's when volatility is high, I feel like they have a harder time pricing the options on like the spiders, Qs, Dow, what have you, right? So options, so like the volatility is high right now, and what I was noticing is that so through next week's FOMC meeting, the spiders are looking at about a 5.5 point move, which will only be about a third of last week. And I mean, just this week alone, right, from where we closed on Friday to the high, I mean, we moved about $4. So with FOMC next week, I mean, probably probably going to depend on how like the next couple days play out, but something to keep an eye on, right? Because those prices could actually come down because of the time value, like over the next couple days. But even more important, I'm looking at like the July 1st contracts. So those are the ones that will go through the G20. So like those contain the FOMC meeting next week, and they will be the contracts closest expiration for the G20, right? So the G20 is 20th, 29th. These expire July 1st, so it's Monday. And right now, those are priced in about 7.5 points. So that's several weeks of time value. The FOMC next week and the G20 at the end of the month. And to me, it seems like so much hinges on like these two events and G20, right? And the technical action and the type of volatility we've seen. It just seems that 7.5 seems like it may end up being lighted, right? I mean, just when you like compare it to what we did like last week before that, and then like the couple weeks when we've had some bigger moves, right? We have seen like 10 point weeks, and so like you have 3 weeks now, 3 weeks for 7.5 points on the SPY. So it definitely seems kind of interesting to me. So yeah, so that's what I'm looking at. That's kind of what I call like the state of the spiders right now, right? You have had some wild action, probably set up for some sustained wild action, and what's nice about the fact that we're moving right now, kind of what I mentioned yesterday, is that it's like a almost like a perfect bridge between the end of earnings season, and the end of May, right, just recently, and then the start of the new earnings season in the beginning of July, which is coming up, right? So we have like this really nice period of volatility with some bigger events that bridges, the typically quiet period between earnings season. So it kind of keeps things busy, right? All right, guys. So let me know what you think. If you have any questions about what I talked about, or if you have any comments, please reach out. I'd love to hear from you. All right. So have a great night, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow.